In 1936, Jesse Owens waits at the start of a 100-metre race. He's on track to win, yet the stadium fills with boos. (1827), Samuel Cornish hacks at his typewriter, determined to finish the first ever newspaper for African Americans by daybreak. In 1879, a young Mary Mahoney wears a bleached white uniform as she tends to her first patient as a registered nurse. These are just a few of the African American pioneers lovingly recorded on today's map. Some world famous, some local heroes, each part of a remarkable story told by a fascinating woman. I'm Jerry Broughton. Welcome to What's Your Map? An Oculi Mundi exploration. In this podcast, we hear from those who live and love maps, making, preserving, interpreting, and being inspired by them. In each episode, we ask our guests to unfold a map that is special to them and to tell us the stories that lie behind it. To follow the map as we talk about it, go to oculi-mundi.com. I've come here to Washington, D.C. to visit not its famed corridors of power, but its corridors of books and maps. The US Library of Congress is the largest library in the world and America's oldest federal institution. The library's map collection boasts some of the world's most famous maps, but I've come here to see one that's been relatively neglected until the intervention of one very remarkable woman. Iris Taylor has been a library worker for almost 50 years with a specialist interest in cartography. So if you want to find a map, Iris is your go-to person. Iris, welcome to What's Your Map? And tell me, what is the map that you're showing me here today?
Today, I'm showing you Americans of Negro Lineage map by Louise E. Jefferson. First, I'm not going to say first because we're still discovering, but she is an African-American cartographer, female cartographer, which is in itself first and inspiration, especially for someone like me who can relate to her as being African-American. It is a wonderful, we call it a pictorial map.
Yep.
And a pictorial map is more so the artistic symbolism of the map versus the technical aspect of most traditional maps. And in her map, it seems like she is doing a geographic storytelling. It's a wall map, basically, and it is the shape of the United States of America. The United States itself on the map is in a golden yellowish color. You see like lakes and rivers that are colored in blue.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Because it looks in many ways, when we first look at Iris, here is North America. It seems quite straightforward. As you say, it's a pictorial map which shows a recognizable North America. We can see the Great Lakes, Florida in the bottom right, California over there. The title here, Americans of Negro Lineage. But it's the content here, isn't it, which is very surprising. Before you tell me that, what date is it and what are Jefferson's dates as well? The date of the map is?
The date of the map is 1946. Louise Jefferson was born in 1908 here locally in Washington, D.C. Her symbols, the colors within the map, it looks like she's trying to just pour everything, all the contributors of African American descent into one map to tell that story about, and I think mainly too for children, because of the illustrations and the finer details, it would attract children more so to really learn about their African American history and all.
So in effect, what this map does is overlay a history which isn't really recorded in so many maps. What immediately strikes me is that running round this rectangular map are the names of significant African-American figures, I think. Is that correct?
We have names such as Jesse Owens, one of the fastest runners in the world. You have Duke Ellington, oh my goodness, favorite music piano player there. We have John Hope, who is a historian in his time. Let's see, you got Nat Turner. You also got Thurgood Marshall, first Supreme Court Justice, African American.
And then at the top, you also have a series of representations of significant figures. And the map itself is showing us, as you describe it, a pictorial map, which gives us all the different key cities and states of the US, but with figures and significant events of African American history.
And exactly of history. It talks about the musicians, the entertainers, and it encompassed the whole United States within this map, which is very unique itself. It even has symbolism of the Underground Railroad, where you can follow along up to north and into Canada. So I thought that was interesting. It's like, I have to get everything into this map.
Right.
You know, so it can be shared.
Right.
And so the stories can be told. Because it's not just the main ones that we learned about in school, Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, but it encompassed the whole gamut. Within the neat line, you had mentioned there are a lot of names listed here.
Yep.
And I looked up a few of them because there were names, plenty of them, that I had no idea of what contributions they had made. But like Sterling Brown, I know you hear of Sterling K. Brown, the actor today, but Sterling Brown, who was an ethnographer who did stories of African Americans during the Harlem Renaissance. And that's why this map is important as well, because it is Louise herself intermingled with a lot of these people during the Harlem Renaissance time. And like
Langston Hughes is down here, I see, and we've got
that's right.
Richard Wright.
They found in one of her papers, it says that Langston Hughes had put a note in her pocket. And so that is in a collection at the Amistad Research Center with Tulane University libraries. They have that collection there, and that's where you can find a note that Langston Hughes had wrote her in one of the pockets. So I thought a lot of this is very interesting, and when I was researching it, reading up on it again, I was like, wow, I didn't realize it had this much information. It has a population map here of the U.S.
That's in the bottom left-hand corner if we're looking at that. So it gives you the population. So then I guess it's trying to then blow that out into the little stories that we see across the map. Tell me a bit more about it, or some of the stories that we're seeing, what's being described here.
Like in the bottom right-hand corner, you mentioned the cartouche.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing how the structures, they have the African mass there listed, and then you have the scrolls as well, and then the ship as an African ship, slave ship here.
Yeah.
All of that information is located within the cartouche of the map, which I think is fascinating. The colors, they're just beautiful. This map contains slave ships on the eastern side of the map itself, of how they sailed in. They sailed in from Africa. So it's a fascinating map. You have them coming in from Florida, and up here Charleston, and a lot of those are areas in which you had enslaved people there. So, but I thought that it's just fascinating. I like the story they tell about Nora Zell Hurston. She's a fiction writer, that she was born and raised in a town of the smallest African American town.
Down here, where is she? In Florida?
Yes, in Florida. And it's Eastonville. Yeah.
So the detail is incredibly fine. So next to it, you have on the coast, you have details of fishing. You have then accounts of agriculture and industry.
A lot of times pictorial maps are not drawn to scale. Yeah. But it's amazing history, all in one place, all in one location, where you can find out about Indianapolis and Springfield, where Lincoln was, and all newspapers, books, the people that contributed, the educators that we had. You had Booker T. Washington, and all of these fascinating. It talked about doctors, nurses, and you have the images
across
along
the bottom
here.
Yeah, so this makes it very pictorial, that it's almost an artistic representation. So I see you have black doctors, you have soldiers, you have nurses, you have, what else have we got here? People working in agriculture and industry.
Agriculture, yes, exactly, all along the bottom.
Iris, when was the map made, and who was it made for? I mean, this is so extraordinary in terms of dating this. You told me to 1946. I'm fascinated to know, who's she making it for, and what do you think she was looking at the impact of this map to have?
So, yes, this was one of the maps that she created while working as the artistic director at Friendship Publishing House, located in New York. And at that time, I'm going to assume that she really created these maps for children and youth, because during that same period, she had wrote a book for youth and for children as well. And within it, she drew illustrations, rather, within the book. And so she just said, okay, I'm working now at this publishing house, and here is my opportunity to maybe put my story there where children could pick it up and maybe understand it by having all these great illustrations, because I guess that's the way that they say children learn best. And they can retain it more so by looking at the illustrations, and they can follow along, and it would be of great interest to them.
Sure.
There were others made along the way, too.
Now, this is really interesting because you've brought these other maps. Can you tell me a bit about them? Because this is not the only pictorial map she does. What are they, Iris? What else did she make?
So she made, like, Indians of the USA. All of them are published by Friendship Press, all in the 1940s, roundabout. And it's telling that community. It's incorporating all of the stories of, like, the Indians of the USA, of the indigenous people in their communities and how they lived and all. I like the one particular part in the Indians of the USA map. In the center, she talked about the Trail of Tears, how they were uprooted.
It was indigenous communities, which is fascinating that somebody of African-American descent is doing a map like that to talk about what happens to the indigenous communities. To be doing that just after the Second World War is a radical gesture, is it not?
It is indeed during that time period. But that is something that's on her map. Yeah. But again, it's not, her maps encompass so much more. Not only, you mentioned the Trail of Tears, but the people themselves, what they did, the living, the contributions that they made to society and all. And she felt like, I could feel that she felt like this is a way to uplift the people and their spirits and all by talking about all the good that they have done within the community.
Which is tough, isn't it? This isn't a point about maps. Maps don't often celebrate the people who are, as it were, on the ground. And you've brought us two other maps to look at here. What are the other two?
The other one that's on the left-hand side is the uprooted people in the USA. And that's talking about all people that were moved, all walks of life, that were moved from one area of the United States to different areas, and why and where their relocations are now, and the type of work that they did and all. So that's the uprooted, and the one on the bottom is the makers of the USA. It's mainly inventors, and it breaks it down by race or ethnic group of people, like the Irish did this, and they're located on this side of the map, on the west coast of the map. And you have the African Americans on the right hand on the west coast, and all that they invented and all that's included in that.
This is amazing. I mean, I'm just looking at this. So again, what she's done is round the edges of the map, on the frame of the map, she's listed all the different groups. I can read some of that. Slovaks, Poles, Norwegians, Russians, Koreans, Ukrainians, Romanians, Finns, Scotch, Irish, Scandinavian, Chinese, Indians, English. On and on it goes. I mean, a country formed by migration. Wow. Listeners, I cannot tell you how lucky I feel to meet Iris, not only in person, but in the ornate halls of the Library of Congress. Such a privilege. To hear more about inspiring people like Louise and Iris, be sure to join our global community of explorers by subscribing to this podcast. From mapping the cosmos to building a new image of the world, we have a wealth of episodes for you to enjoy. And subscribing means you won't miss a single new map, guest, or story from this series or the next. Now, back to Iris and her story. Tell me a little bit about Louise Jefferson. I mean, her story is amazing.
It is really and truly amazing because I had never heard of her, especially someone that looks like me. And her father was a calligrapher as well as an engraver, and her mom played the piano and also sung on a cruise ship along the Potomac River. It's just amazing to make those connections here that's local within the area. The Potomac River, Washington, D.C. Louise Jefferson was an illustrator. She just loved the artwork. I read one part that was stricken with polio, and so she had her legs were sort of for that disease. Her legs wasn't as strong, but she fought the odds, and she became a local champion, swimming champion, as well as a certified lifeguard. So you think about if someone with that much strength and just empowerment to want to continue into, she didn't let the disease hold her back. So if you think of her in that manner and you see all that's encompassed in her map and trying to get this story out about African Americans, you could see that she is really an educator. She's a trailblazer, a pioneer in her field itself. I love the term geographic storyteller. Yeah, she takes that geography and mount stories and locations of where these contributors are in the field and what they did and the work that they've done. She's just a wonderful person. She worked, I guess, until her 60s, and then she passed away in Connecticut at the age of 93.
What else do we know about her later in life? Does she carry on working in maps, or does she carry on working across all these different fields, doesn't she?
I think it's all those different fields, because I heard that she is mostly known as a photographer. Yeah, more so than a map maker. Here recently, I think that has been brought out, because we found them within our collection all of a sudden, and we had them right here at the library.
So this is great. Tell me this story. I mean, how did they come about? What happened? How did you discover them within the library?
Actually, it was a colleague of mine who came across these because it was her area for cataloging the maps and all. And she came across and she was like, "Iris, look what I found within our collection." I was like, "No way, this isn't true." To really have an African-American female maps that are drawn.
Was it just completely by chance? Because I love it when this happens. This happens, as we know. People suddenly find a map and go, this is a map that we thought was lost. We're going to talk about the Waldseemüller map briefly. Just these maps which just, are amazing. And suddenly they change also, as I think this actually does. It changes our understanding of thinking about African-American history and map makers. I've worked in this field for decades, and I didn't know that there were 20th century African-American map makers.
I'm with you too.
And is the idea is this part of a longer going project? Are we going to find others by her or other African-American map makers?
Well, that is true. And actually the makers of the USA was one that we recently just found in the collection. Since the cataloging of these materials, the series that she had produced first, then and now there's been a whole lot of interest. So now we're collecting a lot of her maps. And we went to search, person went to search with, and then lo and behold, that was in our collection as well. Because we have collections of maps that are basically uncatalogued. And so you could search them and all, and pop up that we have them.
So presumably this can lead to more research, both on Jefferson, but also
it's a lot of research still left and open for on Louise Jefferson.
Right.
Yeah, there's no telling. I think we're up to 12 maps that are cataloged in our collection.
Oh, so there's 8 more. What?
Yeah.
There's 8 more?
There are others.
What have you got?
We have more that she had published at Friendship, Map of Africa, because she traveled extensively. And when she would come back, she would create these maps on what she saw once she traveled abroad. Or she went to China, she went to Africa about 5 times. They are very similar to this style. Yes.
So when are you doing the exhibition? I mean, this must be a great exhibition. I work in this field right back to prehistory. This is something I've never seen and didn't know about, and you didn't, and the collection didn't. I mean, this is amazing.
It's amazing.
So it needs more attention. I mean, it's a general problem, isn't it? I mean, talking about that, I've been looking at the Library of Congress and some of the great artifacts. We know Mary Tharp. Mary Tharp is one of the great female map makers, and it's
yes.
completely missed out. These are stories that are just not told. We tend to think that map making is done by, if I may say, people like me, white middle-aged men. That's not true. It's simply not true. Right? And so I find it interesting to look at this and say, hey, Jefferson is now part of a changing story about, I guess you'd call it American map making.
Yes, indeed, and I hope so. And hopefully she'll be included in a lot of the map resources that we have now.
And this is how we do that. You and I know this. It's how you make map history. Curators like yourself and people who work in the collections find this sort of thing and then say, hey, this tells us a new story. And the history of map making goes off in that direction. And
it does.
It's another layer to that story. And do you know what, Iris? You're now a little part of this because you've opened up this work by Jefferson and these maps. So tell me a bit about you and how you've worked in libraries all your career, I understand. And you've ended up here now, sitting here, looking at these maps by Louise Jefferson, which I think is rather wonderful. So tell me about your story about working in libraries and how you've ended up here.
So I started in libraries, like I'm not going to say but way back when, as a library page, working in libraries. And
whereabouts?
In Richmond, Virginia, which is 2 hours south of Washington, D.C. So I started as a library page, and I worked as a library page while attending high school and all, because it was like one of my favorite jobs. I started that summer, and they hired me through a summer program, and they hired me permanently, so I would work part-time and go to school. But it's so fascinating to learn all the call numbers and everything, wherever a book goes, but all the information that is there and readily available for you, especially if you had homework assignments. Right there at the library, you can find it. But if you enjoy research and just learning, you're never too old to learn. And working in the library, that's what you do. You find out all of these discoveries, you find out all this information that you had no clue about. It opened your eyes, even though if you can't travel as much or you've been living just in this little square box at a time, working in a library really opened your eyes to see all of that. And I used to work in the mystery section, so go figure, right? I started off in fiction and mysteries at the library, the Richmond Public Library. And I worked different libraries, like State Library of Virginia, as well as university libraries. So I ran the gamut on libraries because that field is very exciting to me. And you don't hear little children say, when I grow up, I want to be a librarian. But it's a fascinating field.
Yeah. And how did you end up here?
So here at the Library of Congress, I was working at the Library of Virginia, and I was going to attending school to get my master's in library science. So I would commute 2 hours from Richmond, Virginia, to attend college courses here because Washington, D.C. and North Carolina were the closest places where you could get your degree in library school. I had a supervisor that pushed me, and that was the main key. He mentored and he pushed me. He said, no, you're going to get your degree. I said, no. I have a family. I have children to raise. And he said, no, you're going to get your degree. And so I commuted from Richmond, Virginia. I would work 10 hours, 4 days a week, and take Thursdays off and commute to Washington, D.C. to take classes on the campus of Catholic University in order to obtain my degree for libraries. And while working here through Catholic University, a position came open, and I was doing my internship, or in a way through school, how you get credit for doing an internship there. I was doing it here in the Geography and Map Division. And the position came available, I applied, and so it's history.
And is that when you got switched on to maps then? Was it that move? Was that when you started being really exposed to this kind of world of maps?
I was exposed to maps at the Library of Virginia.
Right.
At first. They were just at the end of the 90s. They were just starting to catalog that collection there. And so I was fascinated by it and to learn this unique type of cataloging, because you have books and maps is totally different cataloging for that. And I started and I enjoyed the feel of learning about maps, because you have to do coordinates and you have the scale and all of that with maps that you don't have fields for it in the book genre. So I worked on maps there, and then the position, a full-time position, which helped me get the full-time position here because I could use that experience in working at the Library of Virginia to transfer here at the Library of Congress, which is the world's largest library. And this map division itself, like you said, you have 5.8 million maps and onward up to 6 million maps within the collection.
The figures are really staggering. I believe not just maps, but there's 20,000 items a day coming into this library, which is just staggering.
So much.
It's amazing. It's just mind-boggling. But the maps, of course, are what we're here to talk about. And I wonder, what is it for you that gives you the kick around maps? Why are maps? I mean, again, we look at Jefferson's maps here. What is it about a map that a painting or a letter or even a poem do differently? What do you think it is that makes people so obsessed with maps?
So maps to me, I always, every conference I go to, I was like, you got to include a map, because that map, it will pinpoint that story you're telling. It could pinpoint exactly where that geographic area is located. It sort of will bring that story home to most readers. Okay, because then you have your reading and it's just out there, but you say, okay, Richmond, Virginia, you know, from you had that map, you could display that on it. So for me, a map just brings it all together for that storytelling. From that point of view, you just can't live without maps within your stories now. I working here in the Geography and Map Division, I always like to tell the story that I once cataloged a map drawn by the cousin of Thomas Jefferson. So close, but not. And also, my favorite in the collection is Atlas that was drawn by Jedediah Hotchkiss, who was a Civil War soldier, and he drew the map while on horseback during wartime. And the lines are just so straight, you would say.
Wow.
You know, and his attention to detail just was so, and the colors that he included, like he drew the enemy lines and where people on horseback was. It's an amazing document that I just love.
Wow.
And I just have that. So those are stories that I love to share, that I had the opportunity by working in this unit.
It is interesting. Isn't that amazing? Because you've got some of the great maps of the world. You've got the famous Martin Waldseemüller map of the world, which is the first to show America, which is from 1507. But you didn't go for that. And often, I think as map historians or archivists, we go for some tiny, crumpled, little messy map that somebody draws on horseback. I love that story.
Because the map, the book itself, and it had holders for pencils. It was just so cool for the time. I didn't, for the time period, I just wouldn't have thought that. I just envisioned all of this.
Yeah.
I get the story from him sitting there, they're shooting all around, and and here he is. So many stories just could come from that. To see.
I love that. So Iris, just tell me, what message do we take from Jefferson's map that we're looking at here? What do you think it gives us, the uniqueness of this as a map? What's the story that you want it to tell now, today, here in 2025?
I would like to share with everyone, it's a fascinating and very inspiring map to see, and you definitely should view it because it explains and it go in detail, and it has comments on African American history throughout the years and all that they did and accomplished and all that can happen moving forward. It'll give you great inspiration of this woman, Louise Jefferson, that she, during her time period, she just did so much more. She was first artistic director of Friendship Press. She was the first for a lot of other organizations, but she just kept on moving. It seemed like nothing stopped her. She was very creative, and from the images within the map itself and the details within the map, it just says so much more. It's really a good geographic story on African American history throughout time.
And, I think it's just the beginning of more we're going to hear about Louise Jefferson and probably about your work reclaiming her as part of the history of cartography. So, it's been an absolute privilege to be here and to see it through your eyes. So, Iris Taylor, thank you so very, very much for joining me on What's Your Map. It's been an extraordinary delight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you taken out to come and interview me for this map, because it's a fascinating map. So thank you so much.
I was absolutely bowled over by Louise Jefferson and her beautiful geographical storytelling, and by Iris's own journey. I hope you were too. It was such a joy to meet both these remarkable ladies at the Library of Congress, the home of maps in the US. I'm Jerry Broughton. Thank you for tuning in. This has been an Oculi Mundi exploration. The producer is Emily Uchida Finch, and it's a Whistledown production. Oculi Mundi is the online home of the Sunderland collection of antique maps and atlases. You can read more about the collection, see the maps from the podcast, and send suggestions for future maps to explore at oculi-mundi.com. And join me next time when Harvard professor Jeff Lichtman will be diving into an intricate map of the human brain.